Good evening to all of you, ladies, lords, highnesses, chiefs, gentlemen, comrades, friends, brothers and sisters. To this premiere of the African Identity. Now, we're here in the Africa Centre, and we're grateful. This is organised by the Fatherland Group, which is a think tank. Mostly Africans, but also some non-Africans. As long as you've got Africa in your heart, the Fatherland Group is for you. So, my name is Gabriel. I'm a surgeon and a poet. Why are we talking about African identity in 2025? After all, Africans have been around for thousands of years. And by now, they should have known what their identity is all about, shouldn't they? But surprisingly, not every African is very sure about his or her identity in terms of Africa. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Identity generally has four frameworks: your language, your anthropology, your indigenous territory, and also your history. So in that framework, if you ask an African, what's your identity? You find out it's difficult to reconcile. It is really difficult. Some Africans obviously lost their identity even before the colonial times, during the slavery times. And then others got their identity pretty confused. So for now, what centralizes the African identity is the color of your skin. So we're trying to get this discussion to get us past just the color of your skin, but bring the identity to the right place as it should be. So, there's a book titled Culprits, written by Dele Ogun. Now that book, I'm going to use the example of Nigeria. It describes the origin of Nigeria. And also, it elaborates the connection between identity and development. So that's really important. In terms of the film, what you're going to notice is a fruit, the orange. And you might be wondering, what's the fruit got to do with it? What we realize as we discuss is that the orange fruit's quite unique. It's got multiple segments inside it of the fruit itself, and it's covered by a protective skin. And we believe that every ethnic nationality is that segment. And then they're all sitting side by side in harmony, but then they've got this collaboration as their protective skin. So, if you see the orange in the film, that's what comes to your mind. But we're finally here, so we're really pleased. We've had to pick our own pockets quite deeply to try and bring this to fruition. So we're going to hope that you all promote the film to set this discussion in motion, and also bear in mind that if the African identity is really sorted out as it should be, it's not going to be beneficial only to the African development, but it will be to the benefit of the world. Because if you just take a deep look, you realize that the First and Second World Wars were actually because of the disruption of the African identity via the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885. Now, a few people realize that. So, we believe Africa's identity should be sorted out properly, the development of Africa sorted out as well, and that will help the whole world. So, I want to thank you one more time for coming and joining us in this journey. So please enjoy the film, and we'll have further chats about it. Thank you.
The African story has come from a long way.
Lights. Camera.
But right now, going forward is nearly an impossibility for the mother continent and its numerous ancestral nations. Locked in unworkable and thus not working political and economic structures that were designed by the enemy to keep them stunted and dependent on them. The African plains and landscapes have witnessed the dynamics of peoples, civilizations, events, and beliefs long enough to finally develop a mindset immune to exploitations and invasions. The only reason why Africa suffers and lags behind is because Africa is still set as a structure of colonial experiment.
Well then, you have the floor, don't you, right now? You really have issues with her name?
Just one issue, ma'am. One issue.
That Susan Abraham is a foreign name for an African?
That, and also that it sits oddly on her regal African frame.
Like the t-shirt and the jean? And what do you have on your head? And the durag sit nicely on your superb shape, your superb frame, right? Wow. By the way, may I ask, where are you from?
I'm obviously an African man. I'm from Nigeria.
Where then?
Plateau State.
Where?
I mean, Jos. I'm from Jos. Which one be? I'm from Jos.
You had 4 times to identify yourself. And on each occasion, you couldn't mention your ancestral nation. How does that make you feel?
I guess it makes you feel better now. And if I don't, give your life to Christ. Christ. Change for good.
By chance, who's your grandfather?
My grandpa is the son of the returning from the Americans. A wise and powerful farmer who is afraid of nothing. My grandpa is not an ordinary man. The land of the white man couldn't eat and swallow him whole. It forced them to send him back to the land of his ancestors. My grandfather is a good man, connected with his ancestors and the spirit of our lineage.
Allegiance is sacred, oh.
Yes, so. And it flows from the center of our heart, like the blood that enslaves our body. The person that we don't have respect for and held us, he is a bastard. Bastard! Real bastard! The person that does not respect king and nation is a bastard. Yes.
Give us back our nation.
Will they hear?
But instead of our king, we'll have to pay homage to someone who they will have us choose for them. Someone who doesn't know us. Someone who don't know. Someone our ancestors did not raise. How can that even work?
I don't care. We don't care whether it is your mother, your father, your sister, your son, or your family members. All resistance must be eliminated by force.
So these people got us by using these useless idiots amongst us, gave them power, and then hauled us into slave ships headed for a trip to Dune across the Atlantic.
You still see slavery, Susan Abraham. Slavery was just a soft foot through the doorway. Slavery was only a dress rehearsal for the command performance that is still going on till today.
Then there was suddenly no more slavery. The one who started the act called it a crime against humanity after profiting massively from it. And we were all free people now. No compensation. What they did to us. And they later labeled a huge crime. It is not even printed in any books of history as a genocide of the worst kind. But we were then free, so they made us to believe. But was our country ours? A country they had taken and run as they liked, yoking together into one humongous country without recognizing our nationalities, without respect for our ancestral ties. They wanted us to work this nation and make it work. Were we indeed free? Are we free?
I honestly have no connections with my ancestors. I didn't even know until now that I have a nation, and that nation is my connection through my ancestors to my inbred morality, strength, and creative spark.
Care to explain, please?
Please, he's toying with the fires of hell. What is all this talking about? Ancestors and spirits. Holy Ghost! Let me out! Until we meet again. Bye.
We are gathered now, not to bury Nigeria, but to create it and rename it as a model of self-determining and self-protecting ethnic nations, collaborating for mutual benefits, just like ancient times. We always been and will always be an Orange Union. Nigeria will be remembered as a speck in the core of an orange.
I want to thank you all for coming out and watching this movie. I'm guessing some of you are feeling sad, maybe angry, or even a sense of fear, which is understandable. But living in fear isn't how we meet this challenge. We do it through understanding and spreading that understanding. This is the role of storytelling. This is why this film was made. This year, 2025, in which this film is being released, marks the 140th anniversary of the end of the Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885, at which the ethnic nations that made up the original African identity were abruptly cancelled. People woke up to find themselves in political union with strangers, artificial and imposed unions that have cost countless lives. The European Union was a response to centuries of warfare amongst Europeans after the following appeal. The European peoples must themselves voluntarily bring about their unification in their own way and in a manner consistent with their history and culture. We recognize that a forced unification by any non-European power will be neither satisfactory nor lasting. We believe that this is the way to end the turmoil in Africa also. We Africans must ourselves voluntarily bring about a union in our own way and in a manner consistent with our history and culture, in place of the unions imposed by the European powers. Steve Jobs once said that the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. But then the power of the story only goes as far as the numbers who come out to watch it. The screening of this short film is the triumph of an idea. The names you see here on the screen took a stand to make sure this story could be shown to all of you. And now you can pass this story along so that millions of people will see it. Feel free to pull out your phones and scan this QR code. Since we don't want money to be the reason someone doesn't see this movie, we have set up a Pay It Forward program where you can pay for someone else who might not otherwise see it. If you are able, we invite you to pay it forward. Join us and millions of others as we take African identity and the new light that it brings for Africa to the world. Thank you for helping to pass this story on.
Thank you again. What a sensation. I mean, I always wanted to be on screen. And I've managed to engineer it. Did you see me there? I said, that's me on screen. Hollywood, here I come. I want to take this opportunity to introduce some of the faces behind the project. You saw the name Bonny Uba, post-production. That's the man there. Genius is just incredible. I mean, he's a publisher. This is the interesting thing about this Fatherland Group. We're oddballs. So his proper occupation is in the publishing industry. He's been in that industry for over 30 years. But his passion is our people and making our world better for us and by extension for everybody else. You also heard a name there and saw on the screen, you heard from him earlier, Dr. Gabriel. Please stand up. He's a very modest man because he's actually a surgeon and not just your regular doctor. Yes, specialist surgeon. And but he wrote that script. He wrote the script. It just goes to show you the human potential that we all have, that we're not one-dimensional. The seed that is planted within us, if we give it the opportunity, allow it to express it, there's so many other things that can come through. And who produced the soundtrack? Oh, Joe's laughing, she's giving it away. It was the former DJ turned lawyer, turned historian right here in front of you. They got that soundtrack. And did you follow the lyrics? They have the animals in the jungle. We need to learn from them. Because nature is an awesome teacher. If we only take the lessons in. Whereas we human beings, as they said, brother and sister, neighbors, good friends, they make enemies of each other. But the lion reigns in the jungle, the elephant reigns in the jungle, and the wild cat reigns at the same time, simultaneously. But what they've done in Nigeria is they've created one seat for 371 ethnic groups. And you compete on a winner-takes-all basis for that one seat. You need to learn from the animals. Now, there are other members of the team that are here. I want all the Fatherland people to come to the front, take a bow. I mean, it's not every day we get this opportunity. Yeah? So, Fatherlanders, come to the front. Show yourself. Come to the front. These are the professions, the skills, the sectors that they all come from. I see one or two Fatherlanders still sitting there shy. There's Rita there. Come on, we haven't got time. Come on. There's my wife Esther behind the camera. Come on. And there's the chief executive of this establishment as well, behind the lens as well. Come on. Take it back. These are some of the people who made it possible, but you saw on the screen the names who made sacrifices, dug deep in order to make this happen. So, yeah, all of you take a bow. Very well done. On behalf of everybody else. Now, if Gabriel can stay up, Tim can stay up, and Bonny stay up. My left brain tells me that I ought to mention the origin of the Fatherland Group. It was, it started from the book that I wrote in 2017, A Fatherless People, because I was seeking to understand what is wrong with this country. I know how brilliant Nigerians are. You know how brilliant they are. They know how brilliant they are. If you don't know, they know how brilliant they are, and they'll let you know how brilliant they are. And I just couldn't connect it with the state of the country, so I almost became an investigative journalist. So what is the real problem? The problem is not the people. I was not persuaded by that. The problem is the structure, and that's what I brought out in the book that was published in 2017, A Fatherless People. And from fatherless came the concept of fatherland. And we just started as a discussion, the few that had bought the books, it started as a discussion group, and then COVID was really helpful to the project. They had nowhere to go, they were locked in, so we had online discussions and debates. And one of our foundational debates still resonates to this day. It was titled, "The Problem with Nigeria, is it the people or the structure?" And because most people have swallowed the narrative that, they're just corrupt, they're just lazy, they're just dishonest, that's just the way they are. And in the course of the debate, people began to realize, no, it's the structure. It's that competition for one seat, for 350 ethnic groups that were previously self-governing, that you try that in the European Union.
Musical chairs.
Yeah, how many Sun readers are going to vote for a German, a bloke from Germany to come and rule the whole of Europe? So we got to the bottom of it, and that's how Fatherland started. Now Fatherland is what? We have over 300 members on the platform, arguing 24/7. Every single day on various issues, but it's an information clearinghouse. Anybody here who wants to join, you're most welcome. We don't discriminate, wherever you're from, you're most welcome. But we're going places. We're now into film production. Can you believe it? Well, I want to give you a chance for take a few questions if you have any. Any questions? Yes, Joe, go ahead. There's a mic there.
Thank you. I have some observations.
Yes, please.
First of which is that when we got to the end of the movie and the music and everything came, I was waiting for the movie to start. It's like, this is a taster, And the other observation is, at the very, very beginning, when you see the land of Africa, then you see the white line drawn around Nigeria. I really found it most interesting for once to see Africa with no map lines drawn, as it must have been, really, And then the third line was a line that Eke said, which I thought was just so profound, really. And I find it true of my own culture, which is that I find within it a great negativity. And then the next part of the line that Eke said was that something to the effect of, this is what was promoted. This is what was promoted. And the justification for it was scarcity, that we must all be at each other's throats. We must have a negative culture because of some concept of scarcity. Whereas what I see all the time that comes from Africa and Africans is an enormous generosity, you know. I find Africans are not mean people. And I've always felt really at home. That's why I gravitated to the Africa Centre back in 1974. I would go two places were my home. I come from the north of England. Down here I found two places. One was the Africa Centre and the other was Ronnie Scott's club. So, so now I'm going to shut up. But thank you so much for listening and I hope I'm interested.
I have a question. Is the exhibition downstairs connected to the movie directly?
No, it isn't.
That's interesting because the first thing I said when I saw the exhibition is DNA. And when the orange came out, I was like, the DNA of people brought up in one orange.
Wow, what an artistic, you can tell this person is an artistic mind.
That was it, that was my question, because it was so interesting that the two of those are so connected, interconnected.
That's fabulous.
Yes.
No, it wasn't intentional, but
well,
you know when things are right, they just convert. There's a convergence, isn't there? They just come.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much for that comment. There's a lady over there.
My sister said I shouldn't speak. Hi, I thought I'd comment on the start of the film when you said that Africa is disrupted because of the white people. But what we forget, and I read history, first degree and a master's, what we forget is that the white people would never have gone into the hinterland of Africa. What they did is they waited there, and our ancestors took people to the coast. But we forget to mention that. So when you circle back to the beginning and say that the problem with Nigeria or Africa is the structure, we still have to recognise the part that we, as black people, played in the slave trade. But we seem to forget it quite a lot.
Let me address that because one of my books is titled A Slave Ship Called Jesus.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand the true story about slavery and what happened. What I realized is that when we understand that even God works through human agency, and the devil too. And so what happened was that when, if I talk about how Britain got into the slave trade very briefly, they saw the money that the Portuguese were making, and the Spanish, as the ships were returning from the Americas. They said, well, we've got to get into this thing. And there's the fellow John Hawkins was the one who initiated it. He sailed to the coast of Sierra Leone. And the coastal peoples simply kidnapped the first boatload. So you can imagine if I kidnap this boatload and sail off with them, there'll be one of you, maybe two of you, who are lowlifes and who could be used. So it starts with the kidnapping, the raiding, and then in that batch you'll find the resistors, the fighters who rather die, but you'll find the compromises, and it's still history, always repeats itself. We have the compromises even now, so you're right, we have the compromises. But it's a fact of history that there will always be a weak link. And then
it's a weak link we never mentioned though. But we have to start.
Oh, no. If you read Slave Ship Called Jesus, we acknowledge it. But the narrative that we must be wary of is the narrative that we had for sale signs on our coast. Hey, we're selling our people here, come on over.
Actually, it was worse than that. We didn't have for sale signs on the coast. What we did is we brought the people to the coast. And I know this because my ancestors are from Ijebu. Any wars that they won, they took the people to the coast and sold them as slaves. The white man didn't go inside because they were dying from the diseases. They waited on the coast and sold them for gin and mirrors. But we never acknowledge that.
Let me explain that.
We need to.
Let me explain that you are right in part, but where did the weapons come from that enabled the Jebu people, for example, that you're referring, that changes the balance of power? Yeah, because if they're all using the same weapons as we were, nobody's kidnapping anybody. You understand? But the balance of power changes because they came along, give them the gin, give them the weapons. We're not capturing you any longer on the coast because you got wary. When the ship's coming in, you're running inside. It's not you we're after. There's the weapons. It's too detailed to discuss here. You and I are historians. We've read.
Yeah, thank you for the film.
Now that's what you call a voice. Go ahead.
And I hope that in time, a lot of us will continue the art of storytelling. Everywhere in the world, even in science and technology, all we see are stories materializing as our lived experiences. But I have a question for the think tank, I think, is the Fatherland Group. A lot recently have been going on around Pan Africanism. Now, there was an Igbo man who was here in the 1780s and wrote a book about his experience from slavery. And what intrigued me is that he described himself as an Ethiopian. It could have been possible for all of Africa to be divided into maybe 4, 5, 6 countries altogether. And when you think in terms of Pan Africanism, my question is this: do you see a scope for a functional Africa to materialize from bringing together those people that have been divided by colonial lines to something that mirrors what they originally had before the colonial masters intervened?
Good question. Just don't call them colonial masters. I'll rest my voice and allow my colleagues.
So basically, the answer to your question is what the Orange Union is all about. Pan-Africanism obviously talks about everybody coming together, we're going to be one and all that. But before you achieve unity, it's got to be unity of purpose. So you've got components. Each component has to be a complete, holistically, before you come together. So, professional habit. If your hand is gangrenous, that means you're going to have to cut it off. Right? If you don't, it will infect the rest of your body. So the hand has to be whole. The leg whole. The head whole. So every segment, unit, what we call the original ethnic nationality has to be whole. And then you come together. Otherwise, you see, if you ignore the inner potential of every original nation, nothing will work. You're going to get strife. Take a good look at the European landscape. For 1,800 years, they kept on fighting, non-stop. And that was because there was little respect for the unit of an ethnic nation. But if you notice what happened after coming to Africa, they noticed exactly what you recognized. Africa has 2,100 ethnic nations. And the reason why,
Slightly less than India.
yeah, and the reason why was because they were able to mind their own business, tolerate your neighbor. If you ignore that unit, ethnic nation, and you start bringing everybody together, you're going to have a lot of problems. So if I come to meet you, and I respect you, you respect me, we're going to get on well. But I have to be taught to respect you. And this is what our ancestors did in Africa. They actually accepted, that's your place, that's my place. I'll come to visit you, you come and visit me, right? And the Europeans did it in the end. And this is why you see 27 ethnic countries in the EU. Not like what they had before, Prussia, whereby you got 7 nations, and they killed themselves non-stop. It's a human thing. We've got to accept it. And the social engineering which you have in the Berlin Conference was deliberately designed to make sure you don't get a safe single ethnic nation. People don't realize this. It was a deliberate thing to bring 40 of you in one group. Because they could have dealt with you as your nation, and then dealt with the other one as the nation, and then the other one. I'll give you an example. For instance, the Egba Kingdom. They were left alone until 1932. And then they were brought in, the bunch, bundled everybody together. So the exploitation will work out when you're all bundled and you don't have your unique identity anymore. Because, I mean, you're going to be clashing non-stop because I can't agree with your culture, you can't agree with mine. But if I let you do your job and I do mine, and then we come and exchange, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, you get the musical chairs. Fighting for one chair, 300 we really have tried, actually.
Tim Modu, some comments.
Yeah, I think just to add to the challenge, I think one of the questions, one of the earlier questions that was asked was the idea of what we are missing out. There's so many segments of the questions. I want to bring them from a particular perspective. So the first thing, Fatherland people, we thought we have to deal with is what I call a narrative war. There is narrative war, and we don't even know what's the truth anymore. That's the reality. Part of it is the more we look into it, we realize that there is a deliberate strategy to keep informing or misinforming us Africans. It's very fundamental. And if you think where the structure actually resides, it resides on the great institutions and universities and research institutions that even many people will have their doctorate degree. But if you actually go and begin to unpack it, you find out a significant basis of the science or the research behind it can be traced to be false fundamentally. And so we know we cannot win this war by going straight and saying, let's come together, all this. So we started the narrative war. And so we kind of felt the first thing we can do is to get involved in the narrative war, to get into the areas where we think things are obvious for the naked eye. Because I remember when I was growing up, and you do studies on who discovered River Niger in primary school. If you wrote any other name other than on the back, you will fail the exams. You will fail. So if you can imagine, if your question in the exam says, who discovered River Niger? and you wrote any other thing and said, my people have been living there before Mongopak, you will fail. You will not have that qualification. You have to write Mongopak. And so that is just an idea of what most of the things, I can give you so many examples of that. So the point AK is making is about some of the fundamental stories in history where the Fatherland Group feel that we've got to deal with it fundamentally first. And the other point is if you go to Fatherland website, you will see what we call, a strapline we have, unlearn to relearn. First thing first is that majority of us here just don't see any reason or believe that even the degrees they have, they are quite fundamental things that they have to unlearn. It takes a lot of courage because you may not create space to take in new information if you're not willing to accept that there are some fundamental issues to unlearn. So in Fatherland website, you see a strapline that says, unlearn in order to relearn. So we are working towards helping people, providing the information. This movie, for example, is part of the unlearning experience. We are challenged, we don't have all the answers. So, but to unlearn, we have to then begin to learn what we are supposed to learn. I came to realize that it's not Mongopak that discovered River Niger, for example, because I have to unlearn that to now realize who and where. So these are sort of measures that Fatherland Group, strategically as a think tank, we're pursuing, dealing with the narrative work. But believe you me, there are incredible challenges facing us, and the books, for example, I thought Dele would have talked about the culprits in a way. Some of these books, we're using now the books as part of the unlearning and relearning message. So I just thought I'd put this general thing out there for you to know. And the Berlin conference that we're planning in November is part of the major unlearning to relearn, because nobody in Africa has ever looked at what really happened at Berlin, where we talk about Africa being brought together. None. We've checked. The idea of discussing, Africans coming to discuss what happened on the day. What are the minutes of the meeting, for example, at Berlin conference? We're getting there. In November, we will do it. We will put it open. Let's understand the conversation. And the final point I have to make is that I used to think, because it's Berlin and Germany was where, I always think the Germans were the ones that the chief priest in organizing that. But actually, history not telling me, they were the most neutral, that everybody else agreed to come on the table. Now that's unlearning, because I never sort of knew how to place Germans when the people sat on the conference. And I began to understand that it must be that they were the least among the people who were messing up then. And everybody else agreed that they are most neutral, so let's go to Berlin. So there's so many unlearning to relearn that we're going. So that's part of the message I have to leave now. Okay? Cheers.
A big thank you to each and every one of you, because without, as I said, Steve Jobs said, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. But if you're not there to hear the story, there ain't no power there at all. There ain't no power. So you've made us powerful, and this film is going to be rerun here. So please tell your friends. This is going to be the home of the film for probably the next, this is your 60th anniversary. Yeah, so, right, so it'll be here. It'll be here. Tell your friends. We're going to publicize the dates on the website, and your emails. We'll only use your email to let you know that film. But please help us to spread the gospel. We are missionaries. We have a new faith, and we have a new religion, and we're going to convert the whole damn world. So anyway, with that, thank you again, and do drop a word in on the camera, please. There's a word. Thank you very much.
Ẹranko tó ń jọba nínú igbó pọ̀, kálukú jayé ọba ẹ̀ nínú igbó. jọba nínú igbó pọ̀ kálukú jayé ọba ẹ̀ nínú igbó. Erin jọba kìnìún jọba ẹkùn tún jọba láì sí wàhálà rárá. Erin jọba kìnìún jọba ẹkùn tún jọba láì sí wàhálà rárá. Láàárín àwa ènìyàn ọmọ ìyá méjì wọ́n máa bára wọn ṣọ̀tá. Láàárín àwa ènìyàn ọmọ ìyá méjì wọ́n máa bára wọn ṣọ̀tá. Ẹ̀gbọ́n pẹ̀lú àbúrò wọ́n máa bára wọn ṣọ̀tá. Ọkọ pẹ̀lú aya wọ́n máa bára wọn ṣọ̀tá. Ọ̀gá pẹ̀lú ọmọ iṣẹ́ wọ́n máa bára wọn ṣọ̀tá. Ọ̀rẹ́ méjì tímọ́tímọ́ wọ́n máa bára wọn ṣọ̀tá. Ó yẹ ká kọ́kọ́ lára erin. Ó yẹ ká kọ́kọ́ lára erin, lára ẹkùn, lára kìnìún. Ó yẹ ká kọ́kọ́ lára erin. Ó yẹ ká kọ́kọ́ lára erin, lára ẹkùn, lára kìnìún. Kálukú jayé ọba ẹ̀ nínú igbó. Thank you.